Have you ever noticed how busy life feels these days? We wake up, rush through tasks, check our phones, worry about the future, and chase one goal after another, often forgetting why we started in the first place. And somewhere in all this motion, happiness seems to slip further away. What if I told you there's a philosophy centuries old that offers a completely different approach to life? One that doesn't promise endless excitement or instant gratification, but something far more lasting. Genuine joy and peace of mind. Epicureanism. You've probably heard people associate it with indulgence, with pleasure in the simplest or sometimes shallowest sense. But that's a misunderstanding. True Epicurean thought isn't about excess. It's about clarity, about understanding what brings real, sustainable happiness and what just clutters our lives with stress and distraction. Imagine a life where you savor moments instead of rushing past them, where a quiet morning, a heartfelt conversation, or simply watching the world unfold becomes a source of deep contentment. That's the kind of joy Epicurus talked about, a joy rooted not in chasing everything, but in choosing carefully what truly matters. Over the next few minutes, we'll explore how these ideas, ancient, yet surprisingly modern, can help us reduce stress, focus on what matters, and actually enjoy the life we already have. We'll see how applying Epicurean principles doesn't require huge changes, but small, mindful shifts that transform how we live, work, and connect. And if you're ready, let's dive into a path that leads not to more chaos, but to more joy. Imagine waking up on a Monday morning, coffee in hand, staring at your email inbox. The messages keep coming: meetings, deadlines, follow-ups. You feel that familiar tightness in your chest, a creeping anxiety that maybe you're not doing enough. You've worked hard, built a career, climbed the ladder. But despite all your achievements, there's this gnawing sense that something is missing. This isn't a rare experience. In fact, in America today, the average executive works more than 50 hours a week, constantly chasing the next goal, the next raise, the next promotion, believing that more achievement equals more happiness. Yet, for many, that formula seems to fail. You're surrounded by wealth, comfort, even luxury, but inside, there's a quiet, persistent dissatisfaction. This is exactly where Epicurus steps in, over 2,000 years ago, quietly turning the concept of happiness on its head. When we think of pleasure in modern terms, we often imagine indulgence, fine dining, expensive vacations, shopping sprees, or the thrill of new gadgets. But Epicurus, the Greek philosopher, had a different vision. He argued that the ultimate pleasure isn't in accumulation, nor in fleeting excitement. Instead, it's in what he called ataraxia, a profound, calm state of mental tranquility. It's the pleasure that comes from freedom from pain and freedom from anxiety. As one source aptly puts it, Epicureanism focuses on the removal of pain and anxiety from our lives to achieve a calm state of mind. Let's return to our overworked executive. Imagine this person finally stepping away from the non-stop rush. They take a moment in the park, feel the breeze, hear children laughing nearby. They start to realize that happiness isn't about the next bonus or the next deal closed. It's about peace in the mind and comfort in the body. Epicurus taught precisely this. True pleasure is freedom from pain in the body and from trouble in the mind. He reminds us that the pursuit of excess, more work, more money, more possessions, often generates exactly the pain and anxiety we hope to escape. Consider the American culture around hustle, productivity, and constant striving. From motivational speakers to LinkedIn posts, the message is clear: more effort, more output, more recognition equals happiness. And yet, statistically, stress, related illnesses, anxiety disorders, and burnout rates are climbing. People are living longer and wealthier, but not necessarily happier. The irony is stark. In the pursuit of material success, many are sacrificing the very tranquility that Epicurus prized. Epicurus wasn't advocating laziness or a lack of ambition. Far from it. His philosophy is a call to redefine the metrics of success. He challenges the conventional wisdom that more equals better. Imagine a scene from modern life. A busy parent juggling work, errands, kids' schedules, and social obligations. They feel trapped in a whirlwind of responsibilities. Epicurus would ask them to pause, reflect, and consider. Which of these activities truly add pleasure? Which are simply habitual or imposed by societal expectations? By making deliberate choices, by eliminating unnecessary stressors, they can cultivate that state of mental calm and bodily ease. The power of this philosophy becomes even more apparent when we examine real life examples in the US. Take, for instance, the minimalist movement that has gained traction over the past decade. People are selling off unused possessions, downsizing homes, or even embracing tiny living spaces. Why? Because they've recognized that clutter, whether physical or mental, creates anxiety. Removing excess allows the mind to breathe. This aligns perfectly with Epicurus' insight. Happiness is found not in acquisition, but in eliminating pain and fostering tranquility. Epicurus' vision also resonates in the context of mental health awareness today. Psychologists increasingly emphasize the importance of reducing stress, prioritizing mental wellness, and simplifying one's life. Cognitive behavioral therapy often encourages people to identify unnecessary anxieties and confront them directly, which echoes Epicurus' centuries-old guidance: identify what truly harms you, then systematically reduce or remove it. By doing so, we make room for a more profound, lasting pleasure. The calm, steady satisfaction that does not depend on external validation. To make this tangible, picture a young professional in New York City, living paycheck to paycheck, working late nights, constantly comparing themselves to peers on social media. One day, they consciously choose to step back. They limit social media, focus on meaningful relationships, and spend time on activities that genuinely bring joy. Like hiking in Central Park or cooking a favorite meal. Slowly, they notice a shift. The anxiety that once dominated their thoughts begins to recede. The noise of comparison and societal expectation diminishes. Here, the modern American experiences a version of Epicurean ataraxia. The lesson is clear: happiness is accessible, but it requires conscious effort and a shift in perspective. Epicurus' insight can feel revolutionary because it challenges the assumptions deeply embedded in Western culture. We are taught to pursue more money, more status, more possessions as a path to fulfillment. Yet, by reframing our understanding, we see that true pleasure lies in simplicity, in conscious living, and in reducing sources of pain. By letting go of the unessential, by focusing on mental and physical well-being, we unlock a kind of joy that is steady, resilient, and enduring. And so, as we sit here today reflecting on modern life, it's worth asking ourselves, How often are we chasing illusions of happiness? How often are we accumulating stress instead of pleasure? Epicurus' philosophy is not an abstract, distant teaching. It is profoundly practical, offering a roadmap for navigating the chaos of contemporary life. By prioritizing mental tranquility and bodily comfort, by consciously choosing simplicity over excess, we can discover a form of happiness that is not contingent on circumstance, wealth, or status. We can step off the treadmill of relentless pursuit and finally feel the subtle, yet profound joy of being truly at peace. In essence, Epicureanism reframes happiness. It tells us that the real thrill isn't in acquisition, but in release. The real luxury isn't in indulgence, but in calm. And this insight, though ancient, is strikingly relevant today, because in a world obsessed with more, Epicurus reminds us that less can actually be infinitely more. By embracing this vision, by seeking freedom from pain and anxiety, we begin a journey toward a life marked not by frantic activity, but by steady, enduring joy. A joy that is quiet, yet profound, fleeting, yet lasting. Imagine for a moment a busy street in New York City. People are rushing past, each one carrying their smartphone, earbuds, coffee cups, and a small shopping bag from the latest trendy boutique. Every glance is a calculation. Do I have what others have? Am I keeping up? Now, think about the woman on the subway scrolling through social media. Her heart racing every time she sees friends or celebrities with the latest gadgets, the newest car, or exotic vacation photos. She feels that familiar pang of envy, that pull of desire that never truly ends. Sound familiar? It should, because this is not just her story, it's all of ours. Modern life, particularly here in the United States, is a constant bombardment of wants. And yet, despite our achievements, our gadgets, our subscriptions, and our endless treat yourself moments, the anxiety persists. Epicurus, the Greek philosopher who lived over 2,000 years ago, understood this human condition deeply. But here's the twist. Unlike many who equate pleasure with indulgence, he taught that true happiness is found not in the endless pursuit of things, but in managing and minimizing our desires. He categorized desires into 3 types: necessary, natural but unnecessary, and vain. Necessary desires are simple and essential. They sustain life, like food, water, and shelter. These are not optional, they are foundational. Natural but unnecessary desires are things like fancy food or comfortable clothing. Nice to have, but not required for peace of mind. And then there are vain desires: fame, excessive wealth, status symbols. These are the desires that keep us trapped in a cycle of comparison, stress, and unending pursuit. Picture an executive in Silicon Valley, always checking stock tickers on his phone, thinking about quarterly earnings, his next promotion, the next tech conference where he must appear successful. Every achievement quickly becomes the baseline for the next one. This is where Epicurus' wisdom strikes like a ray of sunlight in a dark room. True pleasure, he argued, comes not from acquiring more, but from reducing unnecessary desires. The moment he stops chasing every fleeting want, the moment he embraces simplicity, he experiences relief and internal liberation from the stress that modern culture conditions us to accept as normal. Let's bring this closer to home. Consider a family in suburban Chicago. Every year, they feel pressure to upgrade the car, renovate the house, buy the latest gadgets for their kids, and keep up with neighbors whose lives seem perfect on social media. This cycle is exhausting. Anxiety builds. Tension fills conversations at the dinner table. And what do they gain? A momentary thrill that fades within days, often leaving a lingering dissatisfaction. Now, imagine if they applied the Epicurean principle of managing desires. What if they prioritized what truly mattered: nourishing meals, a safe and comfortable home, quality time with loved ones? What if they consciously minimized pursuit of fame, status, and material excess? They wouldn't just save money. They would gain peace, presence, and mental freedom. Epicurus coined a word for this state of self: sufficient contentment, autarkeia. In simple terms, it means relying on oneself, finding sufficiency in simplicity, and freeing oneself from the endless demands of external expectations. In modern terms, it's minimalism with purpose. It's about decluttering not just our homes, but our minds. When we want less, we worry less. We stop measuring our lives by the yardstick of comparison and start measuring them by our own sense of fulfillment. And here's a practical example we can all relate to: the smartphone. It's a marvel, right? But how often do we feel compelled to upgrade the moment a new model hits the shelves? How often do we check notifications endlessly, scrolling through lives that seem brighter, richer, and more exciting than our own? The moment we recognize this as a vain desire, one that adds little true joy, we can step back. We can use our phones, enjoy their convenience, but we no longer serve them. We regain control. That, my friends, is a small but profound application of Epicurus' teaching. Another real life illustration. Imagine a young professional in Los Angeles, constantly attending networking events, chasing recognition, always asking, am I doing enough? Am I seen enough? She finds herself drained, running on autopilot, and perpetually anxious. Now, what if she paused, reflected, and asked, which desires are necessary for my happiness, and which are simply vanity? Perhaps she realizes she values creativity, meaningful work, and connection over superficial recognition. By scaling back the vanity desires, fame, status, impressing others, she liberates herself. Her life becomes more deliberate, less frantic, and infinitely more peaceful. This principle isn't about deprivation. It's about focus. It's about making conscious choices that protect your mental space. By understanding which desires are truly essential, you redirect energy toward experiences that nurture the soul rather than clutter it. It's a countercultural move in a society obsessed with accumulation. The world around us tells us that we must constantly strive, acquire, and perform. Epicurus whispers a different message: find sufficiency, reduce unnecessary wants, and allow your mind to rest. There's an old saying: the more you have, the more you are occupied. The less you have, the freer you are. In a country like the United States, where consumerism drives economies and cultural identity, this message is revolutionary. And yet, when applied, it's profoundly simple. Imagine a morning without the stress of comparing yourself to others, without the compulsion to chase the latest trend. Imagine evenings spent not shopping or scrolling, but genuinely connecting with loved ones. This is the quiet liberation Epicurus promised: peace through managing desires. And the beauty of this approach is that it's accessible. You don't need to move to a mountaintop or reject modern life entirely. You can start small. Notice when a desire is superficial, when a want is driving unnecessary anxiety. Practice gratitude for what you already have. Make intentional choices about what you consume, both materially and digitally. Begin to embrace the freedom of wanting less. Each small step compounds. Your mind lightens, stress diminishes, and a deep sense of contentment begins to emerge. As one contemporary writer puts it, when we want less, we live more. Epicurus would nod in agreement. By identifying our desires, categorizing them, and choosing carefully, we are not denying pleasure, we are refining it. We are trading fleeting thrills for enduring joy. And in today's fast-paced, comparison-driven society, that trade might be the most important one we can make. So, next time you feel the tug of envy, the restlessness of unfulfilled wants, pause. Ask yourself, which of these desires are necessary for my well-being? Which are vain, feeding anxiety rather than joy? And how might my life change if I minimize the latter? In exploring these questions, you step into the Epicurean path, a life where the mind is lighter, the heart freer, and happiness is measured not by acquisition, but by peace. Let's take a moment to think about your own life. Right now, as you're listening, what does your circle look like? Do you have people you can call in the middle of the night if something goes wrong? Or do you feel like everyone is too busy, caught up in their own world, to really notice you? Epicurus, over 2,000 years ago, had an insight that modern research keeps confirming. Our connections, our friendships, our communities are not just nice to have. They are essential to our happiness. In fact, he called friendship one of the greatest means of obtaining pleasure. And before you roll your eyes at the word pleasure, remember, he wasn't talking about fleeting, surface level enjoyment. He meant deep, lasting contentment that comes from knowing you're not alone in this world. Now, let's ground this in something familiar. Imagine someone living in a bustling city, maybe New York or Los Angeles, constantly hustling for success. They've got the penthouse, the designer wardrobe, the perfect Instagram feed. Yet, when they get home at night, the apartment feels empty. The walls are just walls, and the silence is deafening. They scroll through their phone, double tap a photo or two, and feel nothing. That emptiness, that ache of loneliness, is something Epicurus was already concerned about. No amount of wealth, no luxury item, no social status can replace the comfort of someone who truly sees you, hears you, and walks through life with you. Epicurus believed that friendship gives us safety and joy. Think about it, in ancient Greece, the world could be dangerous, unpredictable, and harsh. But having a trusted friend, someone whose presence offered emotional refuge, meant that you could face challenges without fear. Today, the principle is the same. Whether it's reconnecting with a childhood friend after months of not talking, or finding a group of peers who share your passions, these relationships are buffers against life's stresses. Loneliness, studies repeatedly show, is a major risk factor for depression, anxiety, and even physical illness. Friendship, in contrast, is a protective shield. Here's a story to illustrate. A woman I met last year had spent months buried under work emails, Zoom meetings, and deadlines. Her apartment, though impeccably decorated, felt like a silent cage. Then she made a small decision. She reconnected with an old friend for coffee every Friday. At first, it felt awkward. Years of life had passed, and they had changed. But week after week, laughter returned. Confidences were shared, and slowly, she noticed something remarkable. Her stress levels dropped. Her sleepless nights became rare, and she started smiling without realizing it. This simple act of investing time in friendship had transformed her inner world. That is the Epicurean principle in action. Pleasure, safety, and joy arising from meaningful human connection. Modern parallels reinforce this. In a culture obsessed with acquisition and performance, simplifying your life, reducing material distractions, naturally frees up time and energy to nurture relationships. You don't need to plan an extravagant vacation or host the perfect dinner. Sometimes, it's the simplest gestures that carry the most weight. A walk with a neighbor, a late night phone call with a sibling, a shared meal with friends, where everyone puts their phones aside. These moments, though seemingly mundane, are profound because they reaffirm our human need for connection. Epicurus didn't just talk about friendship as a luxury. He saw it as essential to mental health. Imagine your mind as a fortress. Wealth, fame, and possessions might be the shiny banners outside. Impressive to behold, but they do nothing to strengthen the walls of the fortress itself. Friends are the stones, the mortar, and the caretakers who help maintain it. They help us navigate uncertainty, share in our joys, and cushion the blows of life's inevitable hardships. In short, friendship is not just enjoyable, it's stabilizing. And let's not overlook the power of community in a broader sense. While Epicurus emphasized close friendships, he also acknowledged that human beings thrive when we belong. Modern simplicity studies confirm that communal engagement, volunteering, participating in local groups, or even casual neighborhood interactions, enhances life satisfaction. When we invest in others, when we step out of our individual concerns and contribute to a circle of trust and care, we inadvertently invest in our own well-being. Our anxieties decrease, our perspective broadens, and our minds find that rare, peaceful state Epicurus called ataraxia. This principle becomes particularly compelling in a U.S. context, where individualism is celebrated and self-sufficiency is often equated with success. Yet, there is a paradox here. The very pursuit of independence, when taken to extremes, can leave us isolated. Epicurean philosophy gently reminds us that seeking autonomy should not mean cutting ourselves off from the warmth of human contact. True autonomy includes knowing when to lean on others and when to offer support in return. Strength is not just personal, it's relational. It's the courage to be vulnerable and the wisdom to choose your circle carefully. Consider the practical implications. Set aside time each week, uninterrupted, genuine time, to nurture a relationship. Call a friend without any agenda. Invite a neighbor over not for show, but simply for shared presence. Invest in people who invest in you. These are not just acts of kindness. They are acts of self-preservation. Epicurus knew, as do countless psychologists today, that our minds crave meaningful connections more than possessions. Laughter shared, shoulders leaned on, tears understood. These are the real treasures, ones that accumulate quietly, but enrich our lives profoundly. And perhaps most importantly, friendship teaches us something critical about the human experience. Joy is not found in isolation. The happiness we seek, the peace we yearn for, cannot be purchased or hoarded. It is relational. It is found in moments where we see and are seen, where we offer care and receive it in return. In a world dominated by screens, notifications, and endless distractions, this is a radical lesson, but one that Epicurus would insist is timeless. So, When we speak about reducing stress and increasing joy, we must remember this principle. Investing in close relationships and communities is not optional. It is central. It is practical. It is necessary. It is, in the language of Epicurean philosophy, one of the surest paths to a life of lasting pleasure, not fleeting indulgence, but a calm, resilient, and deeply fulfilling contentment that carries us through the highs and lows of modern life. And as we continue exploring Epicurean principles, keep this in mind: your circle, your friends, and your community are not just companions. They are anchors in the storm, the very fabric of enduring happiness. Picture this: a mid-level manager in a bustling corporate office in Manhattan, staring at the blinking cursor on a performance report. He's worried, terrified, really, about the next review cycle. What if he gets passed over for promotion? What if the economy collapses and his job vanishes? And in the quiet of his apartment at night, he wonders about bigger things. What if life passes him by? What if death comes sooner than expected? This is anxiety in full swing, a constant hum of dread that drains energy, creativity, and joy. Now, imagine if there were a way to face these fears head on, to neutralize them not with denial or distraction, but with a philosophy developed over 2,000 years ago that still works today. This is where Epicurus steps in, offering what he called the tetrapharmakos, or the fourfold cure. The first part of this cure is deceptively simple. Don't fear the gods. At first glance, it sounds like a statement only relevant to ancient polytheistic societies. But dig deeper, and it's about fear in general, the kind that paralyzes, the kind that makes you second guess your choices or feel powerless. For our modern professional, it could translate to the fear of judgment from colleagues, the anxiety about being found out, or even the dread of societal expectations. Epicurus teaches us that these external forces, often imagined or exaggerated, should not dominate our minds. By realizing that many of the things we fear are outside our control, we can stop allowing them to dictate our emotional state. It's not apathy, it's liberation. As Marcus Aurelius once wrote in a way that resonates with this idea, you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. The second pillar of the tetrapharmakos is the radical, yet liberating notion: don't worry about death. In the United States, the death anxiety epidemic is real. Studies show that Americans spend more time worrying about financial security and physical health than actually planning for the things that bring joy. Time with family, pursuing hobbies, or savoring simple pleasures. Epicurus flips the script. Death is simply the absence of sensation. There is no consciousness, no suffering, no need for fear. To fear death is to fear something that, in practical terms, will not affect you while you exist. Consider a Vietnam War veteran who has stared at mortality face to face, or a cancer survivor who has come through treatment. The lesson resonates even more profoundly. Life becomes infinitely richer when the constant dread of its end is removed. It's not morbid to think this way. It's freeing. By embracing this truth, we reclaim mental space previously occupied by anxiety and devote it to living fully. Third, what is good is easy to get. Epicurus challenges the cultural narrative that we must chase extraordinary wealth, prestige, or experiences to be happy. In modern America, this is perhaps the hardest lesson. Everywhere we turn, Instagram feeds, Netflix dramas, The relentless success culture. We are told that happiness lies in the extraordinary. Epicurus reminds us that basic pleasures, the ones that sustain mental tranquility, are often simple. A good meal shared with a friend, a walk in Central Park, reading a favorite book, or a quiet evening at home. These are not trivial. They are accessible, reliable, and deeply satisfying. By appreciating and seeking these attainable pleasures, we sidestep the endless pursuit of more, which inevitably leads to stress and burnout. Finally, the fourth precept: what is terrible is easy to endure. This is the antidote to catastrophic thinking. Life is unpredictable. Career setbacks, relationship failures, and health scares happen. Epicurus doesn't tell us to be blind to suffering. Instead, he teaches that human beings are more resilient than we often believe. Pain, while uncomfortable, is finite and manageable. Consider a start-up founder in Silicon Valley whose first 3 ventures failed. Through perseverance and perspective, these setbacks become part of a learning curve, not a permanent sentence of despair. By reframing hardships as temporary and often smaller than imagined, we reduce the emotional weight that feeds chronic anxiety. Now, combine all 4 precepts, and what do you have? A toolkit for conquering fear that is immediately applicable. Let's revisit our Manhattan manager. By applying the fourfold cure, he begins to separate rational concern from irrational fear. The pressure to impress his boss transforms into a focus on doing meaningful work. Fears of judgment dissolve when he recognizes that most anxieties are projections, not truths. Thoughts of mortality no longer haunt him, but motivate him to invest in experiences and relationships that matter. And setbacks, viewed as surmountable, they become opportunities for learning, not sources of chronic dread. This philosophy resonates even beyond the corporate world. Consider parents worried about the safety of their children, students fretting over exams, or retirees facing uncertainty. The principles of Epicurus, disarming imagined threats, valuing simple pleasures, and trusting in resilience, provide mental clarity. By incorporating these insights, one doesn't simply reduce stress, one cultivates a profound sense of freedom. The kind that allows for laughter in the morning, peace in the evening, and joy in moments previously overshadowed by fear. Epicurus already have our minds, our health, our relationships, and our ability to savor life itself. And that's where true joy begins. Not in endless striving, but in conscious, fearless presence, grounded in clarity and guided by wisdom. Imagine standing at the edge of a busy street in New York City. Horns blare, people rush past, each seemingly in a race against time. Now, take a deep breath and ask yourself, what if the key to joy, to a life less burdened by stress, didn't come from bigger salaries, fancier cars, or endless notifications pinging our phones? What if it lay in choices so simple, yet profoundly overlooked? This is where Epicurus's ancient wisdom meets the modern world. You, offering a blueprint that is surprisingly actionable for us today. Throughout our journey together, we've seen the threads of Epicurean philosophy weave a tapestry of calm, recognizing that happiness is not excess, but mental tranquility, understanding that limiting desires frees us from relentless frustration, valuing friendship as a fortress against life's uncertainties, and confronting fear with reason rather than letting it control us. But what does it mean to live this way in the context of our busy, hyper-connected lives in the United States? How do we translate these principles into everyday actions that transform the ordinary into something profoundly fulfilling? Start with the idea of limiting desires. In a culture obsessed with more, the average American is bombarded daily by messages telling us that our happiness depends on acquiring the next new thing. Whether it's the latest smartphone, a high-end car, or a vacation we can barely afford, Epicurus invites us to pause and consider which desires are truly necessary, which are vain pursuits that only leave us empty once achieved. By living deliberately within our means, we reclaim time, energy, and mental space. Picture a young professional in San Francisco constantly chasing promotions, yet feeling exhausted and unfulfilled. When she adopts the Epicurean approach, appreciating what she already has, savoring simple meals, enjoying walks in nature, the pressure eases and a quiet joy emerges, one that no paycheck could buy. Friendship, too, becomes a cornerstone in this modern reimagining of Epicureanism. In a world where digital interactions often replace face-to-face connection, investing in meaningful relationships is revolutionary. Think of a college student in Boston who spends hours scrolling through social media, measuring life against curated snapshots, only to feel more isolated. When he reconnects with a few close friends, shares meals, laughs over inside jokes, or simply spends an evening in conversation, he taps into the very essence of Epicurus's teaching. Friendship is one of the greatest means of obtaining pleasure. Real human connection, laughter shared, mutual support. These become the antidotes to loneliness, anxiety, and the constant feeling of running behind. Then there's the courage to confront fear. Anxiety, especially in our society, is relentless. From fears about career health or the economy to existential questions about mortality, we are surrounded by triggers. Epicurus offers a practical, almost radical solution. Don't fear the gods. Don't fear death. What's good is easy to obtain, and what's terrible is easy to endure. Imagine a middle-aged parent in Chicago, anxious about career stability and what the future holds for their children. Applying these mantras, even quietly to oneself, reframes fear, not as something to endlessly fight, but as something understandable, manageable, and ultimately less intimidating. When we stop allowing irrational dread to dictate our choices, we create mental space for gratitude, creativity, and joy. Living Epicurean today is ultimately about conscious practice, not theory. It's about making small but deliberate choices. Choosing a simple dinner with friends instead of scrolling alone. Appreciating a sunny morning instead of rushing through it. Speaking words of encouragement rather than succumbing to internal criticism. It's adopting habits that cultivate a calm mind and a peaceful heart. As one psychological study notes, individuals can choose to stay in pain and fear or opt out of them. The Epicurean path asks us to opt out of unnecessary suffering and opt into mindful living every single day. And here's the beauty. This isn't about perfection. It's about direction, intention, and small, sustainable actions. It could be something as simple as enjoying your morning coffee without checking emails, taking a walk with a friend and truly listening, or reminding yourself that the pressures we feel are often self-imposed and, in the grand scheme, manageable. By integrating these habits, even gradually, we create a rhythm of life where stress diminishes and contentment grows. Not from acquiring more, but from appreciating what we already have and nurturing what truly matters. So here's a challenge I leave with you. Pick one Epicurean practice to try this week. Limit one desire that doesn't serve you. Call or meet a friend you haven't spoken to in months. Confront one fear, no matter how small, with reason instead of panic. See what shifts in your perspective, what lightens, and what joy you uncover. Because the essence of Epicurean wisdom is timeless happiness, is a state of mind, a choice we make, and a life we can consciously cultivate. As we step back from this conversation, imagine your own daily life, not the abstract philosophy, but real, lived moments. The choice to live with less stress, with more presence, with intentional joy is yours. By embracing Epicurean principles, limiting desires, cultivating friendships, savoring simplicity, and facing fear with reason. You're not just learning about an ancient philosophy, you're discovering a method to navigate the chaos of modern life with serenity. In the end, it is not wealth, status, or possessions that define a fulfilled life. It is the quality of our thoughts, the depth of our relationships, and the courage to live deliberately. Epicurus's teachings remind us that joy is not elusive. It is always available, waiting for us to claim it by living mindfully, wisely, and with intention. Less stress, more joy. It is not merely a slogan. It is a way of living, a philosophy for our times, a path toward a life that is profoundly human, deeply connected, and endlessly rewarding.